This is a September 19th meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. We, just prior to the recording, started to discuss reordering the agenda for the evening. Jeannie, can you read off what the third matter that was listed on the agenda was? That's right, I can find it in a second. Anyway, so I think is it arts that we're seeking a special permit for?
Yeah, I'm opening it up, Zach. I'll read it for you.
I thought I had it, but I guess I don't. So let me.
Okay, it's petition 2024-14, petition of Arthur Nagarian to amend a special permit in section 3.2, 3.2.19, and 5.2.7 retail store with signage to include under section 3.2.18 restaurant, open parent ice cream shop, closed parent with indoor seating district. That's the petition.
Wonderful. I would like to address that first, unless there's any objections from my board members.
Novak votes yes.
Great. So if Art is available, we could start.
Mr. Nagarian?
Yes, I'm available.
Great.
Would you like to tell us what
something on behalf of the petition that you have filed before us?
Well, I want to put like a few tables and chairs inside the store, and then put like 2 freezers where we just scoop ice cream, and it won't be like soft stuff. It will be all hard stuff. I have same thing in Belmont, and it's been about a couple months. We're doing really good. I wanted to like copy and do exact same thing in Sherborn in my store as well. We just talk with the health department. They're okay with that as long as this gets approved. We can put a few seats. I have to move the wine racks a little in the middle of the store. So where the windows are, we put like a few chairs so we can customers can sit and enjoy the ice cream.
And so, are you asking for a modification from your existing permit? Is that what we're
Correct. Yes. Yep.
And you said you spoke to the Board of Health with respect to the seating, the placement of tables and chairs. Do you have any more detail with respect to that conversation, or?
Yeah, I spoke with Chris, and also I spoke with Tom, Health Department, told them what my plans are, what I want to do, and they're okay with it. I give them the plan, the architectural plan. What we have to do, it's a small change, 2 freezers, and then the chairs in there. That's all. Not a big changes.
Zach, Daryl's got her hand up if you can't see it.
Yeah, great. Hi, Daryl. I'm not in control of the meeting, but Jeannie, if you want to let Daryl speak, or Daryl, take yourself off mute.
Okay. Hi. So Daryl Beardsley, Board of Health. So just to provide a little more background, yes, the food inspector did have a chance to go through. There's going to be a little bit more equipment that needs to be in there, in particular hand washing, access, and understanding of how many seats are going to be there and the layout. And then the remaining issue is when that is understood, because seats can affect how many gallons you need to attribute to the facility. That needs to be compared with the current capacity of the septic system serving that block of buildings. And so that analysis has not yet.
This isn't anything to do with us.
So Daryl, you have not reviewed the impact on Board of Health regulations with respect to the seating. Is that what I'm hearing?
The comparison of what the anticipated flow is from could be water and wastewater needs for the activities has to be compared against information that Mass DEP publishes, and it can be a per seat and then there's some other ways of evaluating flow. And that precise calculation has not yet been done.
So the Board of Health, in your position, has not given this an unqualified vote of approval?
No, we have not yet. They did identify that some of the additions that would be needed to serve food, there's a difference between prepackaged foods and this kind of service. So they have identified things that would need to be done to accommodate that, and they think that looks possible, but there are not final plans on that yet. So I know in the past, sometimes you've.
Go ahead, Daryl. Sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, sometimes in the past, if it gets through, yes, it's a feasible business, subject to compliance with, Board of Health regulations and working it out. So we're okay with that. Done that before.
Well, thank you, Daryl. So, Mr. Nagarian, I just want to sort of ask you again. I think so. You said you sort of had approval, but the chair of the Board of Health is suggesting otherwise. So I want to clarify.
I mean, like when they told me, is that okay to put these refrigerators here, these freezers here, hand sink? I already have it. That's the approval we're talking about. Like nothing that we hadn't had any conversation about any kind of like extra water usage, nothing like that, because it's the exact same thing as I'm running right now. And the scoops that we're gonna wash it's gonna be all portable. So nothing will be attached or detached, everything will be portable. So I'm not drinking anything, I'm not doing all new plumbing, nothing like that. All the scoops will be portable and water usage will be like that. So it's not like a huge water usage. And at the moment, we don't use water almost not as much, it's just once if we need to wash something, that's all it is.
Board members, do you have any comments or concerns with respect to this petition? Questions?
Well, I'm not sure I understand the concept completely. The applicant proposes to have an ice cream indoor ice cream serving facility, so people aren't going to come and get an ice cream cone filled and leave.
No, it is ice cream scoop shop. No soft serve. They coming in, they asking for ice cream. You scoop it from the freezer. You put in a cone, give it to the customer. They're welcome to sit down and eat it, or they're welcome to leave it. And then the same thing, it's in the cup to the customers. No hearts, no soft serve, no cleaning the soft serve machine, nothing like that. Just the freezer, ice cream from a freezer to the cup.
Okay, and how is the traffic going to be handled? Do you expect that?
There is no huge traffic as we have right now. Plus, there's a lot of parking in the back area, and I'm having that exact same thing in Maynard and in Belmont, and there's no issues.
Okay, well, thank you. Those are only questions I have.
Mr. Novak.
Gotta unmute myself. Forgot on vacation how to run the Zoom. I think I'm generally in favor of this, but I do want to be sure that the applicant and the Board of Health are fully on the same page. I get it that there's no soft serve machine, and that eliminates a lot of complexities, but that's not the only answer. If there are food service requirements for the utensils and the food and how it's handled and how these food service people
we already have that permit. This petition is all about allowing me to change to put a seating inside of the store.
I hear you, but I'm going to stick to my position that I really want you and the Board of Health to be on the same page.
But they putting me on you guys.
Excuse me, Mr. Nagarian, if you could just wait until our other board member finishes his thought, please, that would be.
But it's the same thing. We're going round and round and round.
So I think
With-
just to be honest, Mr. Nagarian, so we just heard you say that everything was all set. We just heard the chair of the Board of Health say maybe that's not the
So
case.
why
So
Tom is not in this meeting, so Tom can speak that we spoke with Tom that comes and inspect the store, and he says that everything is all set as long as the select board agrees to put the seating on the inside of the store. I'm not
Mr.
making
Nagarian,
stuff up.
So I
Mr.
understand
Nagarian.
you may feel frustrated, Mr. Garion, but there is a process, and our job as a
This-
zoning board
I'm
is just
leaving
to
the
make.
meeting. I'm sorry,
Excuse
guys.
me,
Bye-bye.
excuse me.
Yep.
Please control yourself while I'm speaking. This is my meeting. I am the chair, and I've asked you to stop now
Mr. Chair,
twice.
I'm all set. Thank you so much for helping me closing the store down. Because at the moment I'm trying to save the store, bringing stuff in, and you guys are not helping.
No,
Mr.
what's not helpful is the respect of the process, unfortunately, and where we are right now is we're
Dunkin'
trying.
Donuts
To
can go
we have-
without process.
we
The
have
gas station
excuse
goes
me.
without no process. I'm going with the process. Is that what it is?
Mr. Nagarian,
I'm
Jack,
listening.
if you'll indulge me for a second.
Please,
Yep.
please.
Mr. Nagarian, let me suggest in the strongest possible terms that it is really in your interest to let me finish and not interrupt me. I like your store. I want to see it stay open. But frankly, if you say, do whatever I want, or I'll close the store, then close it. I would like to see it stay open. I would like to support you. All I am saying is that one of our conditions, if we approve this, should be that you have to get on the same page with the Board of Health. And then you would have your permit from us, and the trailing condition which would be an easy one that a lot of people do, is go back and make sure you and the Board of Health are on the same page. And it sounds like you're fairly close. Doesn't sound to me like you're very far apart at all.
No, my understanding was that I was all set with them.
Well, that's not what the chair of the Board of Health told us tonight.
Thank you, Rick. And Mr. Nagarian, listen, I understand our Board of Health regulations can be frustrating to navigate. I would advise you that, our job is to ensure that this is a fully compliant proposal. I think it is low risk. I think that there is a low likelihood that this will not pass. But what has been presented before the board this evening is clearly a disconnect between your impression and the chair of the Board of Health. And all we are trying to get to the bottom of is a resolution of that perceived disconnect. I also am a fan of your store and frequent it as often as I can get away from the chains of my laptop. So, I would like to see more options in town, but we have to, unfortunately, we are servants of process, and that is what we are here to try to enforce. And so that's where we are. So if you could try to have a little more patience with us, I would love to just say yes to everything, but then that wouldn't really be me doing my job here. So that's sort of where we are. So I think that it makes sense. I'm going to ask the public who may have comments to comment as well. If you could just sort of hold your comments until others have a chance to speak. Most likely, I think we're moving in the right direction, but I'd like to hear what others have to say. So if there's any butters or members of the public that have any comments to the proposed change in permit, please raise your hand or let us know. So I guess there's silence there from what I can see, unless I'm missing something. So, Mr. Nagarian, I could approve this tonight with a condition, I think, that you're in compliance with the Board of Health. I think that's sort of where we are, unless my board members feel otherwise.
No, I think, speaking for myself, I think it sounds exactly right. It would be helpful, Mr. Nagarian, if you could tell us the number of seats, just so we could write that into our approval. Is it 2? Is it 4? Is it 10?
It will be like about 5 tables, about roughly 15 to 20 seats.
So if we gave you the approval with no more than 20 seats, would that work for you?
That's plenty. I really appreciate it. And of course, a condition if we meet with the health department and we are agree on that.
Sure. Okay.
I would
that
ask,
sounds smart to me.
sorry to interrupt, Rick. I would ask my
Nope.
more tenured members of the board to propose a motion that will be more artfully described than I would be able to this evening.
Pun intended.
Pun intended.
I'd take a shot at the motion, Jonathan, unless you want to.
No, Rick, go ahead.
I move that we approve the petition as submitted to us. With two conditions, one, that the indoor seating be no more than 20 seats. And the second being that all of the requirements of the Board of Health applicable to such food service are observed and complied with. That's my motion.
I second that motion.
My only question is, do we need to adjust anything timing wise as renew the permit? I would seek to vote on that, but I just want to make sure from a timing perspective, you know, do we need to give a different time period to the permit? Are we extending it? Is there anything sort of procedural like that we have to be concerned with?
Smart
Daryl's-
question. I think, Zach, if it's styled as an amendment of the existing permit, it'll run in time with that one and expire with that one. So whenever his existing permit would run out, he'd have to come in for a complete new one, all in the same cycle.
Okay, I see Daryl has her hand raised. I do have a motion to vote in a second on the floor. So Daryl, what would you have to say about this?
I was just going to say, I'll read a couple of excerpts from an email from the food inspector. Because it'll take some time to implement these, I don't know how long, but for example, as I mentioned, the hand washing access, they can either install a new sink or maybe remove a door leading to the dish room with the ice cream bar situated at the rear of the store, just outside the doorway, to ensure a pathway of access to an existing sink. In addition, there are different options for what kind of dip well dip wells there are for washing off the scoops, and that has to be selected and installed. That may influence water flow. 20 seats, you know, will have to be calculated in terms of whether that can be supported by the septic. So there are a number of things. So I don't know if your permit becomes immediately implementable or the condition of being in compliance with Board of Health is what will trigger the start of that.
Thank you, Daryl. Yeah, I think I don't think it affects our vote. If it, from your perspective, board members John and Rick, I don't think it affects our vote here. If something were to expire, he could come back to us and seek a renewal, again subject to Board of Health requirements. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I think we're going to take a vote on the motion on the floor. So I will vote aye myself, Mr. Novak,
Aye.
Mr. Fitch.
Fitch, aye.
Wonderful, unanimous. Thank you very much, Mr. Nagarian. You have your approval from the Zoning Board of Appeals for your tables and 20 seats. 5 tables and 20 seats is what I believe I heard.
And good luck to both you and your neighbor and your businesses.
I really appreciate it, and I really apologize for not being patient.
Okay.
All good. We understand.
Good luck. Be successful.
Have a great day.
Okay. I think we have a couple of 40Bs on our docket this evening. Is there a quick one, Mr. Haverty? We're going to extend again. Is that right? Are we Washington tonight at all on the list?
Yeah, Washington, we'd just like to extend that for, let's say, 60 more days.
Okay. So just for the record, the applicant of the Washington Street 40B project, I'm gonna probably misname it, has asked for another extension of 60 days. I am inclined to grant that request for an extension. So board members, any comments, questions, concerns?
I think we just ought to pick a date certain so we can be adjourning the meeting to a date certain. But other than that, I'm completely in favor of it.
Sure. And if it wasn't said before, for the audience, we're talking about Washington Street.
Thank you.
the,
So Bob, we are on September 19th now, so we're looking at November, the week before Thanksgiving, maybe this year, so. Any proposals?
19th?
Don't we have
Tuesday night?
something down for November 19th already?
No,
Don't know.
we have October 10th is the next one.
Did we also schedule a meeting for the 19th of November? Is my question. Or did I just put that in my phone for no reason?
Was that for, would that be for Pine Hill or was Pine Hill Residences?
No, the next one for 41 North Main is October 10th. I don't believe we did anything else.
Well, November 19th looks like it's open for me. I don't know about others.
It's open for me, but the fact that John has this recollection scares me that I've screwed something up.
Let me
Well-
check something.
I think the only thing we've been kicking out that far though has been Washington Street, and that's this subject
Yeah.
here, so.
I'm not aware of anything else on top of my head that is that far. No, but
Okay.
let's tentatively say the 19th, and we can let's start with the other with our Brush Hill project discussion, and we can circle back to this at the end of the meeting.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I propose that we continue the hearing for Washington Street Homes on Washington Street in Sherborn, Massachusetts, to November 19th, 2024 at 7 PM. That's my motion.
I second that.
Wonderful. Let's should we hold that vote until the end, until Jeannie comes up with any sort of last minute surprises, or should we just let's just table that till the end of the meeting? We'll vote on it at the end.
Right.
Great. So let's discuss, Bob, if you're ready. Brush Hill. I know you've submitted a bunch of materials today, so thank you very much for all of that. I don't know, I can't recall, I apologize, what we discussed we'd be speaking about tonight, so I'm sure someone will remind me.
Sure. So Zach, at the last meeting, I had suggested to you that tonight would be a good night to discuss traffic. We submitted first Tetra Tech reviewed our project, reviewed the traffic on this project. We reviewed their review and came back and made, we agreed with them on a lot of it, and came back and made comments, which we forwarded to you probably a week or 10 days ago. We're here tonight to discuss it. Jeff has a presentation for you that we can go through, and then but if you want to have Courtney from Tetra Tech speak first, it's obviously it's your call, your meeting. And then the other thing, just to kind of set bigger context, we did send you a revised site plan today and a revised stormwater report. Obviously, there's no thought that would be discussed in any material way tonight. What I would like to do is to just show you the kind of the site layout changes, which are fairly minor, but I want to get them in front of you tonight. And then I'm going to suggest that Steve and his team tell us when they believe they would have comments, and in a perfect world, our next meeting would occur after we've seen their comments and had just a little bit of time to digest and respond. And then I thought that we would all get together and have a kind of a fulsome discussion, within the context of all of their comments and our comments as well. That's my suggestion, but I'm happy to go first with traffic tonight, and then Jeff can hop off while we kind of do the rest of it. Or if you want to do the other stuff first, I'm fine with that. Just, your call.
If traffic was the plan, we should probably start with that unless there's any objections from my board members. I think that makes the most sense. So why don't we start with that? If you could just walk through, why don't we start with your plan, the minor plan modifications first.
Sure,
If you don't,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then-
that makes sense. It doesn't, it doesn't impact traffic or public safety at all,
Yeah.
but I'm happy to do that. It'll be very brief. Jeannie, would you mind putting that one pager up for me, please?
I can right now.
Awesome, thank you. So I'll just set context. About 6 or 8 weeks, well, I don't recall exactly the dates, but we submitted the, oh, thank you, Jeannie. We submitted to you the site plan, and we submitted to the Board of Health a Title V application for the septic system. We got comments back from the agent, Mark Oram, at the Board of Health, and he had some concerns about us needing to do additional soil testing, which we did go back and do. When we did that soil testing, it became fairly clear that the better soils for the septic system were a little bit further down the hill, or kind of to the north, if you will, on the site. And so we took that soil data that we, the witness testing and soil data, and have redesigned the system. It's a fairly similar system, but it's just kind of pushed down the hill a little bit into an area where we have, and I think Mark will agree with this, where we have better soils to work with. The perk rates kind of up and now well out of the system, up the hill were slower and harder to work with. So we redesigned that system. We actually, with the better soils, we were able to make the system a little bit smaller. One of the things we did was we reduced the number of bedrooms in the project from 18 to 16. So instead of 6 2-bedroom homes and 2 3-bedroom homes, we'll have 8 2-bedroom homes. So the number of homes is the same, but the number of bedrooms has been reduced from 18 to 16.
Does
I'm
this
sorry?
say-
Mine does not say that.
Yeah, I don't think that's accurate.
Yeah, that's the old message. Mine doesn't show that.
Okay, good. Just checking.
I think
I'm
this is
confused.
background
So maybe I'll
stuff
follow up with
that-
Jeremy. I can make a Jeremy list. I gotta do a meeting with him next week.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I lost connection and I had to
I think
put
you're
a
Eric.
hotspot
Eric,
on my
you're not
phone,
on
so I
mute.
lost internet here at home
Hold
for
on.
some reason. So I dropped out.
The only one in the waiting room is Dan Sickle anyway.
Do we have time for a 1-minute break?
Yeah, we do.
Sure, let's do it. See you guys at 7:31.
Hold on,
All right.
that's, for some reason, the selectmen's meeting is on here.
I think folks need to go on mute.
So now I'm very confused. I
me
thought
too.
those questions were for me and I didn't understand.
So Bob, can you just confirm for me? So the total, the septic area of the leaching field has reduced because the soils have improved and you've reduced the number of bedrooms. Is that right? Is that what you're saying?
So both are true, right?
Right.
Both things allow you to
reduce bedrooms, soils are better, and so therefore the capacity of your septic can be reduced.
Well, yes. So the capacity is, instead of an 18-bedroom system, it now has capacity for 16, which allows you to reduce what I'll call the area of the field, right?
Yes. Because
In addition, moving down the hill to better draining soils also allowed us to reduce the area of the field.
burden has reduced and it's become more efficient.
Correct. Both are true. Yes. Yep. So in any case, because we moved the system down the hill, we ended up needing to move effectively. If you look on either side of the septic system, you'll see on the north or the left side of the plan, there's guest parking down there now. In the original plan, we had a house down there and the guest parking was up near the entrance where you now see a house. So all we've done is we've moved the septic system down the hill, made it slightly smaller, reduced 2 bedrooms, and we've swapped the house and the guest parking, okay? And then a really minor thing is that the wells for house number 8, which is that first house on the right as you come down the driveway, that well is now, we wanted to meet, even though we're not required to meet the local regulations on setback from the septic to the well, which is 150 feet. We wanted to meet them, so we moved the wells around to stay compliant with that 150-foot setback to the septic system. So I don't think it's terribly important, but the well for house number 8 is actually on the other side of that main driveway, just outside that 150-foot dotted line. If you look carefully, you'll see it. It's a little hard to see because the wells are small on the plan. But suffice it to say, we moved the wells around so that we could stay compliant with a 150-foot setback. And I'll remind you all that we have 8 wells for 8 a unique well for each home, just as all of us do in Sherborn. Okay, and I think the stormwater didn't change a whole lot. I mean, there were technical things that changed, but nothing that is, I don't think, meaningful to those of us who aren't technical. And we will have opportunities for any folks out there who are technical to ask questions on stormwater at another time. I'm not prepared to address. I can't even tell you what the changes were because they were pretty highly technical. And I think that's pretty much the revisions in the site plan.
Wonderful. Sean,
Sorry, Zach. One last thing.
yeah.
At the end of our last meeting, Andrew, one of our abutters, asked about the distance from his septic system to our wells, and were we okay with that? We did have this data already when we did the original design, but we're now showing it on the plan for you. So if you look kind of to the right, which is to the south of the project on either side, you see all those circles are around various septic systems of the neighbors. And Andrews is just below the driveway on the,
if I recall this correctly, was he suggesting that the survey may not be as accurate as his understanding or something like that? Or he just wanted to verify?
I think honestly, Andrew was just asking if we were sure it was compliant. And that night, because it wasn't on the plan, I couldn't say that. I told him I thought it was. But now we have, the actual data on the plan, and we are completely compliant.
Sean, I see your hand is up, so I want to see what you have to say.
Yeah, just briefly, I did go through what was just submitted for the stormwater. And there's a lot there, but what's not there and wasn't there in the original and has to be there is phosphorus reduction.
It's funny.
Phosphorus anywhere in that plan, and it is absolutely required by the town's MS4 permit. You can't increase the phosphorus load in any project in town. So change of use and the roadways and et cetera, it's gonna obviously create phosphorus.
Yeah, so Sean, it's funny you mentioned that or bring that up tonight because Bert Corey, our engineer, said to me, long story, but we kind of got delayed and we really wanted to get this into you before the hearing tonight so that we could at least show you things. And because they got delayed a little bit by a couple of days, he said, I don't have the phosphorus stuff yet, so we're going to send it without it, but it is on our brains and we're aware of it and we'll be back to you. So thank you.
That's fine. And I think it's probably just calculations. If you're doing that much TSS, there's got to be some credits in there.
Yeah.
It's kind of a new thing.
He didn't seem to think it was going to be a problem. He just said that he needed another day or two to get that particular body of work done.
Great, thanks,
Sean, for bringing it up, and thanks, Bob, for I assume you'll supplement when you get the information. Daryl, I see your hands raised. What do you have to say?
Just a little clarification. Doesn't change the septic design, but there were a few comments about a more efficient system and better perking soil. So better isn't better in the sense of better performance, better treatment offered by the septic system. It just means that more water will pass through more quickly, and that allows reduction of the size by DEP regulations. Given how close the system is to groundwater, there is some trade-off of the water, the effluent moving quickly through the soil may receive less treatment. So I just wanted to clarify that. It doesn't change Title V requirements. We haven't reviewed it yet, but this may meet all of the requirements. And there was one other thing. Oh, on the wells, there are no state level regulations. So really I'm very happy to hear that the wells meet the setbacks from the septic. Again, we have not reviewed that yet, but because there are no other regulations other than town level for private wells. So that should make things a lot easier for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. Bob, if you're all set with the review of the plans, I think we can move on to traffic, if that's good with you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing to just make sure that we're all on the same page. We are certainly meeting the 4-foot separation between groundwater and the septic system as required by Title V. Obviously, we would never propose something that wasn't compliant. So
And just to confirm, you're proposing just a compliant Title V system, not a wastewater treatment plant or anything like that.
That is correct. That is correct. And it's even different from what you looked at on Farm Road in Washington, in that there is no pre-treatment going on. This is a classic
septic tank and pipes in the ground and discharging.
Old school. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Just for everyone's clarification, it's gravity. I assume, is there a pump here, or is this gravity? There's a pump up to it, but
there will be a pump because the tank is down the hill of the field. Yeah.
All right. So if we want to move to traffic, Bob, if your team's ready.
Yeah. Jeff, are you ready?
I am. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Jeffrey Dirk. I'm the managing partner with Vanessa and Associates and with the transportation consultants on the project. So if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to share my screen. I have a brief presentation to go through with you, and then I will turn it back over to you if that's okay.
It's wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
We can.
Thank you.
I'm going to see if I can make this a little bit larger. There we go. So I'm going to just go through a high-level summary of our transportation analysis that we had undertaken as a part of the project. And as Bob had mentioned, we were fortunate enough to have peer review from Tetra Tech since the last time I think this project was before you, which brought up some questions and some asks for some additional information, which I think are consistent with some of the information that was asked in one of the abutters comment letters as well. And I'll go through some of that new information with you as I go through my presentation. So the original assessment was completed in early August of this year. The peer review that was done by Tetra Tech was done toward the end of August. We did provide a response, as Bob had mentioned, around August 11th or so. And I know Tetra Tech is continuing their review of the project. I worked in our responses to some of their comments that they had on the original assessment. I would note for the board's information that as you go through Tetra Tech's review letter, there were no questions as it relates to the methodology that was used and the overall establishment of quantifying what the impact of the project may be. So a lot of the focus, probably as you've heard through the hearings, really deals with sight lines at the driveway, roadway widths, things of that nature, and just general safety. And I'll touch upon each of those points as well as a part of my presentation. So the structure of the document was prepared in general accordance with Mass DOT standards. So they set the standards that we use in conducting the methodology of conducting the traffic study. Obviously, every study is different, and I know the board's very familiar as you're going through your agenda on the 40B projects. The scope and size of the projects really determine what the scope of the transportation assessment is we have smaller projects such as this. The amount of traffic that the project is expected to produce, which is the second bullet point here, it's on the order of no more than one trip per household during the peak time period. So we're talking somewhere of approximately 8 additional vehicle trips maximum during a 1 hour period when the volumes on Brush Hill Road and the traffic coming in or out of the project is at its highest level. So as we're looking at it from an impact perspective, it's fewer than 1 additional vehicle every 6 minutes during the peak hour. So those traditional traffic studies that I present to the board usually, we're talking about, delays in vehicle queuing at intersections. With a project of this size and based on that volume of traffic, you would not see any changes in terms of increases in delays or vehicle queuing because the traffic volumes are small and they're dispersed over that 1 hour period. So if we looked at concentrated traffic at Hunting Lane or at Western Avenue before and after this project is built, you wouldn't see any difference in terms of how long you wait at the stop sign at either end of Brush Hill Road. So this assessment's a little bit different than those more rigorous assessments, although the key focus, which is really on safety, does not change. That's the same in every assessment that we undertake. So now the last 2 bullet points are on safety. So the first one was motor vehicle crash data. We looked at the crash data along the entirety of Brush Hill Road. In our original assessment, we looked at the most recent 5-year period pre-COVID. There's been some discussion about whether you should include data that is available that included the period when there were COVID restrictions. So there's some debate about that, but we did pre-COVID, so when traffic volumes would be kind of more at a normal level. There was only 1 crash that was reported in that pre-COVID time period. What was asked by Tetra Tech is to expand that time period out a little bit longer, and that was one of the comments from the abutter. So we actually looked at a 10-year period stretching from August of 2014 to August of 2024 inclusive, and looked at every motor vehicle crash that was reported along Brush Hill Road between Western Avenue and Hunting Lane over that 10-year period. There were 5 crashes that rose to the level of needing to be reported to the Registry of Motor Vehicles. So it's 1 crash every 2 years roughly along that section of roadway. So from the standpoint of looking at the number of crashes that are happening, there isn't really a significant number of crashes that are happening along the roadway. One of the other things that we were looking at which is the causes of those crashes, because what we wanted to understand, given the narrowness of Brush Hill Road along specific sections, it's windy, what were the causes of the crashes that occurred? So when the police reports in reporting the crashes and the potential causes, almost exclusively the crashes were reported as the contributing cause was either driving too fast or improper driving, so not paying attention as they were driving along the roadway. Almost exclusively the crashes resulted in property damage only, and they did involve mostly single vehicle crashes with a roadside object, so a tree or some other object along the roadway. So I'd say it's not uncharacteristic of what we would expect to find along a roadway such as Brush Hill Road, but we are cognizant of that as we look at the next bullet point, which is sight lines at the driveway. So we did undertake a sight distance analysis as a part of the original study, and we had some recommendations for that. Brush Hill Road, as you're all familiar, is a tree-lined road with stone walls. So it's a very nice tree-lined rural type of roadway. So as we're looking at sight distances coming out of the driveway to this project, we have recommendations as they relate to vegetation, selective trimming or removal of trees and vegetation, maybe reducing the height of the stone wall. There's a stone wall along the frontage of the property. We do have some detailed drawings that I'll get to at the end of the presentation that were requested by Tetra Tech to prove out, those modifications that we're talking about and making sure that they can be undertaken with either the public right of way or on land that is a part of the project. And so we verified that as well. So now I'll get into just a little bit more detail, and I think I can move this along a little bit quicker. So we're all familiar with the project site. I think it's very distinct in terms of its shape. You can see it here along Brush Hill Road, Hunting Lane over in this direction here. So that's plan right, Western Avenue here at plan left. I point out the curve that occurs here on Brush Hill Road because that curvature here is actually a defining point of where the speed limit changes on the roadway. So 25 miles an hour from Western Avenue to about the curve, and then it drops to 20 miles an hour as you're heading toward Hunting Lane. When we're looking at sight distances, we do take into account the posted speed limit. We generally don't assess sight lines based on the posted speed limit. Just given, you look at that crash data, we know that people are driving a little bit faster than the speed limit. So we've assessed sight lines in this area, again, posted 20. The sight lines we assessed were based on 25 miles an hour at this location here. The width of the roadway as we're traveling along it, it varies significantly. I know we had noted in the vicinity of the project site, it was somewhere between 16 and 20 feet. There was a comment from one of the abutters that it does get down to about 14 feet, and I don't dispute that that's the case. As we're driving along the roadway, just given its condition, there are areas where the shoulder actually breaks off, the pavement's sloughed off from the side, just given the nature of the road and the trees being so close. So there are portions where it's wider, there are portions where it's narrower. The general width is somewhere between 16 and 20. There are areas where it goes down to something less than that, and we've acknowledged that as well. No sidewalks along the roadway at all, and we'll talk about that in a minute as it relates to the project. Again, just an aerial photograph just showing the same location of the project site here. Obviously, looking at the photo, as you travel from Western Avenue, more of an open area, some fields, the horse farm in this area here. And then it gets densely kind of wooded as we head toward the Hunting Lane side of the roadway. These are photographs in looking at the property itself and the vegetation in the area. So this photograph is, we've said it's looking northeast. So this is looking toward Hunting Lane. Excuse me. A couple of things to point out as we look at this photograph. The roadway itself in terms of the trees and proximity. The other thing I wanted to point out, because this relates to sight lines, is you can see the road slopes upward from, let's say, the Western Avenue side toward Hunting Lane. That's important when we're looking at our sight distances, because we need to make adjustments to the sight distance to account for the fact that if you're heading from Hunting Lane towards Western Avenue, it's a downgrade, and it's an upgrade if you're heading from Western Avenue toward Hunting Lane. So that affects the sight lines. You need a shorter sight line if people are going uphill, a longer sight line for that vehicle that's going downhill, because of the fact that it's more difficult to stop as you're traveling down a hill than it is if you're going up a hill, just given the vehicle dynamics. So again, this is a photograph. The project site is in this area here. We're looking toward Hunting Lane. And now we've flipped around. Now we're looking in the opposite direction toward Western Avenue and the project site in this location here. So this is a good photograph where you can see the stone wall. You can see the vegetation that occurs along the project frontage. This slide here looks at the traffic characteristics of the project. So the top number that you see is the average weekday traffic volume. So that's the two-way traffic over a 24-hour period. So we're expecting the 8 homes project will produce 76 vehicle trips in total, half in, half out. This includes all vehicles that will be entering and exiting the project. It's not just the residents, it's any guests. It's FedEx, it's UPS, it's Amazon trucks, trash pickup, all of those kind of things are in this daily number. The two smaller numbers that you see as you look at the far right-hand side on the total column, those are the peak hour numbers. So the weekday morning peak hour is a 1-hour period between 7 and 9 in the morning when the project will have its highest traffic volumes, and that gets added to the highest traffic volumes on Brush Hill Road. The project is expected to produce 6 vehicle trips. And then the next number, the 8, is the 1-hour period, the highest volume hour between 4 and 6 in the evening. So generally when people are coming home from work during that time period. Outside of these time periods, the way we get to 76 is obviously there's more traffic that occurs throughout the day. What we're saying is that if the peak hour, let's say in the evening, if the peak hour occurs between 4 and 5, if I looked at a 1-hour period between 5 and 6, it could be 7 vehicles. It's just not 8. So it's not like the numbers drop off a cliff. It's just that outside of these individual 1-hour periods, the traffic volumes are less than 6 in the morning and less than 8 in the evening, but it doesn't mean it's 0 outside of those time periods, because otherwise you couldn't get to 76 vehicle trips in terms of the peaks. So again, if we're looking at 6 to 8 trips over the course of an hour, The project is not going to generate a significant level of activity to the extent that it would impact motorist delays or vehicle queuing at intersections. And so that's why we would not study capacity of an intersection as it relates to the project, because this level of traffic will not impact the capacity of the intersection. In fact, it doesn't rise to any level of accepted standards that would require a traffic analysis relating to levels of service, delays, or queuing at intersections, because you would not see a change before or after the project's traffic. So based on the amount of traffic the project produced, and again, not having a significant impact in terms of delays or queuing, we have a series of recommendations, and Bob has these worked into a site plan. So we're really talking about making sure that the site, as it relates to internal circulation, as well as when it comes out onto Brush Hill Road, that it can function in a safe manner. So the first recommendation deals with the width of the roadway to the project itself. So this is the internal roadway network, should be a minimum of 20 feet in width and designed to accommodate the Sherborn fire truck maneuvering. That was an analysis, that maneuvering analysis was requested by the peer reviewer, and it was a comment from one of the abutters. We did provide that as a part of our response to comments. And demonstrated that the Sherborn fire truck is able to enter the project from Brush Hill Road, maneuver within the site, and then exit back onto Brush Hill Road and stay within the pavement area. So all the tires, the bumper, the overhead, things like that all stay within the pavement area itself. Because of the width of the roadway being 20 feet or even 22 feet, you do not want on-street parking, and so we've recommended that on-street parking be prohibited along the roadway. And I know Bob's has some visitor parking spaces in addition to the parking for the residential units, which are at least, I believe, 2 spaces per unit. So we have an additional 5 spaces, I believe, beyond that. Stop sign control at Brush Hill Road. Within the project site, just as standard note that we want to make sure everything's compliant with industry standards as they relate to signs and pavement markings. Sight lines, we've made some recommendations. I'm going to hold that for the next set of slides because that gets into a little bit more detail in terms of what's required. But I've already mentioned the fact that we do need to do some selective trimming or removal of trees and vegetation and potentially lowering the height of the stone walls as well. And then the last recommendation deals with a snow accumulation. We did submit a snow storage plan as a part of our response to comments. So within the site, we've shown where snow would be stored. This recommendation really deals with snow storage at the intersection of the project's roadway with Brush Hill Road to make sure that we don't have snow piles out near Brush Hill Road that would inhibit the visibility of our motorists exiting the site and looking to the left or the right. So now looking at the sight lines in a lot more detail. So what Tetra Tech had asked us to do is develop a site triangle plan, which is what's shown here. So what this plan shows is a motorist coming out of the project, looking to their left or right, and then a vehicle approaching the driveway to the project from either Hunting Lane to the right or from Western Avenue to the left, plan left, I should say on this. If from the motorist perspective, exiting the site, Western Avenue would be to the right, Hunting Lane would be to the left. So we've shown what's in yellow here is the physical site triangle. So a motorist exiting the site, looking to the left or right, this is their cone of vision. So they see what's in these yellow triangle areas and this motorist approaching them within that site triangle area. And what you see is there's a distance underneath the yellow line, plan right, that says 159 feet. That's the minimum sight distance that you need to see a vehicle that's traveling from Hunting Lane toward the project to be able to safely exit the project. And conversely, if you're on Brush Hill Road approaching the driveway, if someone pulled out of our site, you need to be able to see that vehicle in Hunting Road at the distance of 159 feet to apply the brakes and not hit that vehicle coming out of the site. Now, if we go to the other side, the distance is 146 feet. So if you're traveling from Western Avenue and heading toward the project, the distance is less than the 159, and that's because of that grade. So the downhill grade is coming from Hunting Lane toward the project. It's going uphill from Western Avenue toward the project. So those grade effects are you need a longer sight distance going down the hill than you do going up the hill. And that's why you see the difference here in 146 going up the hill, 159 going down the hill. The important thing in looking at these yellow areas is it doesn't mean you need to cut down everything within the yellow area itself, because as you know, as we look, you look in a straight line, but you see peripherally. So you see beyond just kind of that straight line. And so you don't need to cut every tree or remove every object that's in the yellow area. The objects that are closest to the driveway need to be removed. But beyond that, if you do remove that and lower the walls, you do have the proper sight lines. So again, this is just showing the site triangle areas, but it does not at all imply that you need to clear everything out that's in there. We only really need to deal with a few trees that are in close proximity to the driveway, because anything close to where you're looking provides more of an obstruction than if it's further away from you. The other thing I want to mention is that it's very often people look at this and think it's like you're looking at a stationary object in terms of the cars. Always keep in mind that those red vehicles are moving. They're driving along the roadway. So if for some reason, let's say the vehicle for a moment or an instant is behind a utility pole or a tree, it appears within tenths of a second because it's not a stationary object, it's moving along the roadway. So obviously we perceive movement much better than we do stationary objects. So that also needs to be kind of considered. And Tetra Tech understands all of this, so I'm not explaining anything to them that they don't already know. It's just good because I think often people look at this and say, oh gosh, they need to cut every single tree that's in that yellow area. That's absolutely not the case. So we've looked at this on plan view. So this is if you're up above looking down. The other important thing to look at is in profile. So you've seen sections where you kind of cut through the site and look at the profile of property. We've done the same thing with the roadway. So this top profile here, this is the profile looking along Brush Hill Road. So if you're looking along Brush Hill Road, these are those drivers. So the red vehicle, this is the vehicle if they're coming from Western Avenue at this position here. This is that vehicle coming from Hunter Lane. This is where the driveway is located. So if you're driving along the roadway, and you can see the grade here very distinctly at Brush Hill Road, again, sloping down from Hunting Lane towards Western Avenue. So at the driveway, the requirements are you need to see a 2-foot object. So if you said, something fell into the road at this area here, if it's a 2-foot object, you need to be able to see that within those distances, 159 feet in one direction, 146 in the other direction, to be able to see it and stop before you hit that object. So what we've shown here is this is the profile of Brush Hill Road. And you can see between where that sight line is, which is the dark line, and the dashed line, which is the surface of the roadway, there's nothing that obstructs your vision. So you could see that 2-foot object if you're driving along the roadway. The lower profile here, this is the sight distance of the motorist in the project site. So that blue vehicle, if we look back, this blue vehicle, they're here and they're looking at the red vehicle here coming from Hunting Lane and the red vehicle here coming from Western Avenue. And what you see as you look at the drawing here is the obstructions that you primarily see is there's a stone wall here, a stone wall here. We know we need to clear out trees within this area here. What's important in looking at the profile, and this is the actual grade of the ground on either side of the driveway. We generally want to have about a foot of clearance between, this is the sight line and the top of the wall, because we know we live in New England and we get snow, or we used to get snow. And we want to make sure that the snow, as it piles up on the top of that wall, isn't going to be something that obstructs your vision. And so we generally recommend that you get half a foot to a foot of distance between the top of that dark line and where the top of the wall is, because for that time period when the snow doesn't melt, that you're able to see beyond the wall. I believe that is my last slide, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman. As I said, we did submit our responses to Tetra Tech, and I know they're still in the process of the review, but I believe we've responded to all of the questions that they've asked for us. So I appreciate your attention, Mr. Chairman. I'll turn it back over.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation this evening, Mr. Dirk. Bob, do you have any comments you would like to add to the presentation before I open it up to the board and the public for comments or questions?
No, I'm all set. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, Bob. Board members, any comments or questions to the presentation?
I don't have any.
I don't see any. So, any members of the public that have any comments, please raise your hand so I can see that you are looking to speak. I see. Sorry, Mr. Novak. I see your hand raised.
Sorry,
please.
again, getting back in the swing of running the Zoom. Lower hand, there we go. Thanks for the presentation, Mr. Dirk. I do want to hear what Mr. Boulay and his team have to say. They say that you've satisfied all their concerns. That's a great thing to hear. There was a little back and forth about the scenic road aspects of this, and I thought I might take a second to try to remove some of that confusion. It is designated a scenic road. That does mean that there's a process if trees or walls are altered, but that's not a showstopper. That is a planning board process, and since we're under 40B, I think Mr. Haverty would agree with me that we sit in the planning board shoes for purposes of issuing those permits. And therefore, I'd encourage the development team to simply apply for the relief needed to alter trees and or the stone wall in accordance with the Sherborn Planning Board's scenic road regulations and the statute.
Thank you, Rick. And I would also, I think, note from my own experience, I think there needs to be some columns or some sort of posts or turn-ins on the stone wall or something like that with the scenic road. So, yeah, I would just look at the local regulations and make sure that we're in compliance with the stone wall repair, whatever it is that needs to be done.
Yeah, the only thing I would say, Zach, I sent some photographs today of the stone that is actually on the 50-foot of frontage that we own, and calling it a wall is quite generous. There's a few rocks here and there that both our abutters have beautiful stone walls along their frontage and that actually turn and go down on their property line. And I would just say that we will leave the stone on our property in much better New England stone wall shape than we found it, I will say.
Well, Bob, I appreciate that, but actually the regulation's pretty clear that if it might be a stone wall, it is a stone wall. So just read the regulation.
Yes.
You're going to be able to comply with
absolutely,
it.
Absolutely. And I said that in my email today. I said that to the extent it's required, I'm happy to make those applications, of course.
I think, a New England farmer's wall starts off with a single course and then, over time develops, right? So, I think the bar to be considered a wall may be low, unfortunately, Bob. So I think to Rick's point, I think just look at I think there just needs to be some turn-ins with respect to, I think, you need like 90-degree turn-ins or some sort of like specific aesthetic.
Well, it'll be quite nice. My only point was to kind of, for those folks that don't get a chance to actually go and look at the site, we're not shredding some gorgeous New England stone wall here.
Agree that the current shape of the stone wall is not as good as many others in town on many other scenic roads. But that nevertheless, it is our job to improve the town, right? So we're going to all try to do our part to make it look better and comply with the regulations. So that being said, I'm going to ask Tetra Tech to sort of respond to Rick's point, and then I see that there's some neighbors that have their hands up, which we will get to. So, Mr. Booley, if you could sort of provide your commentary if you have any, and then we will get to the neighbors.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Steve Boulay, the board's consulting engineer for review of this project. Mr. Dirk gave a very good presentation. It sounded like a lot of our comments were addressed. As he also noted, we did receive their response letter. We are in the process of reviewing that. I do have Courtney with me this evening who reviewed the traffic. I don't know if she has anything to add as far as the presentation. But we are in that review of the responses process, so we should have that over shortly. Courtney, do you have anything?
Yeah,
Thank you. I have done a cursory review of the response to comments. So we're just wrapping that up. But from what I've seen so far, I agree with Jeff that I think they generally have addressed most of our concerns. And then there are a few items that we will likely suggest to the board to consider for inclusion as conditions. There's some items related to coordinating with the school department for bus stop location and things of that nature. So, but happy to answer any specific questions the board may have for me.
So there's nothing else from our peer reviewers, then I guess I'll turn it over to public for any comments or questions they have. I see Mr. Natali's hand is raised. I don't see anyone else at the moment, but so maybe we'll start with Mr. Natali.
So Rick, thank you for sharing about the Scenic Road Act and the process. That was my first question, so you've already answered it. Appreciate it. Just to let you know that property has been tried to perk over the last 20, 30 years. And that stone wall, as you see, it was not the original stone wall. So that's been toppled and pushed over and modified to go in there. So just what it's worth. What the pictures are showing today is not what it originally was. The only thing I will say after that is the yellow area that the line of sight going through goes right through the adjacent stone walls and vegetations of the adjacent properties, which will not change.
Thank you, Mr. Natali. Is there any other comments from the public? Just ask you to raise your hand so we can see it. And Mr. Natali, if you're done, if you don't mind lowering your hand. Thank you. I don't see any other public hands raised or comments. So board members, is there anything else you would like to sort of ask? I know we've had some of late letters from abutters. In particular, there was a letter from, I think, Hill Law regarding a deed restriction. And so I just want to address that tonight. At some point, if there's something else you want to address first, Bob, I'm happy to talk about that. But I just do want to address that letter that was submitted and whether or not you plan on, Mr. Haverty plans on filing any sort of rebuttal correspondence for the board to review and sort of how we're tackling that. But again, I just want to make sure we tackle that tonight. And if there's something else you want to tackle first, please let me know.
Sure. The only thing I would say is just responding on a separate topic to Dennis that the stone wall or the stones as you see them on the 50 feet of property that we have there have not been moved around by us. It's exactly as we found it. I'm a huge proponent of stone walls in Sherborn and would not take apart stone walls. And so I just want to make sure folks know that I didn't change anything. It's as I found it. With regard to the letter, yeah, I think Paul will have a few comments now on that.
I can certainly comment on it now. I think just as a general statement, we disagree with Attorney Hill's points in his correspondence. He talks about a case that's the Murphy versus Hopkinton Planning Board case. I don't believe that their citation to that case was correct because that case involved an actual restriction that was recorded between the applicant and the town. It did not just involve a notation on an approved endorsed A&R plan, which is the situation that we have here. So they're not analogous. Continues to be our contention that this is a local permitting decision, and through Chapter 40B, it is something that the board has the authority to modify or waive as part of its process. I will submit, a more formal written response to that in the upcoming days. I just got the letter I think yesterday. So
understood. Yep, and I haven't had not had a chance to read the case law myself. Obviously, if you could focus your response lawyer to lawyer, if you could focus on distinguishing or refuting the proposition, the propositions that he's made with respect to the case law, that would be great to help lead me down the path to the way you're thinking. I think just for the public's edification, and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to characterize this at a very high level. Basically, there was some abutters that have hired an attorney to suggest that when this lot was approved in the 60s, is that right? That it was done so-
1962.
that was done so with the express condition that there'd be a building exclusion zone essentially in the center corridor of this lot, and that if you've been following the board's activities of late, you'll know that this was a similar issue raised on the Farm Road project, and the key point that is being made in this current project is that there is no 30-year limitation that applies to this restriction, and the applicant is refuting that, and I have no basis to know whether or not, honestly, that who's right or wrong at this point. So that's just sort of for the record. Paul, if I've mischaracterized that, please, correct me from your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the major difference between this and the Farm Road matter is the fact that our contention is there is no restriction. It's not a question of whether or not a restriction remains enforceable. Our contention is there is no restriction. There is simply a condition on a plan that was recorded with the Registry of Deeds. There is no separate document creating a restriction.
And hopefully you'll provide, obviously, thorough analysis on that for us to review.
Yep.
Because otherwise, I think that would be a showstopper. I think we can all agree if there's it would be a showstopper to the current plans. So we definitely want to address that. I think sooner than later. So if you could, I don't know when we want to schedule sort of that. I don't want to press you, but I think that's something that we should address. In terms of our next meeting for this topic, I don't know what you have on your items that you'd like to address, and particularly if you have any suggestions or where you are with any of the other approvals.
I'm sorry, Zach. I didn't quite understand your question.
What would you like to address at the next iteration of this hearing?
Sure. I think our hope is that we could do a full review of the septic and the stormwater, since that's something that I think most people who are interested in this project are focused on. So we'd be happy to do that. We've been holding off on that for the obvious reason. The Board of Health wanted us to move that system down the hill, which we've done. Fortunately, Steve and Peter and folks haven't yet reviewed it, so they're going to review this plan instead of the old plan, which is helpful. But Steve, I don't know if you want to give us some idea of your schedule and timeline, and then we can work around the next meeting planning.
Yeah, I think currently I have my team scheduled out at least through the end of next week. We're getting completely slammed with construction. Everyone's trying to wrap up their projects for the fall. I think if we could get a month, that would be preferable. Certainly there would be a letter in there. I'm also on vacation in 1 week during that month. So yeah, the next, if we could get at least, if we could do a meeting the week of the October 14th, somewhere in that range, I think that would be preferable.
So what I would suggest, Steve, is maybe we even go one more week to whatever the 19, 20, 21 of October. And simply because what I would love to do is get your letter back, say in 3 weeks, and then we would have a week or so to chew on it and come back and respond and be ready to have the conversations. Do you think 3 weeks for you to get something to us is, give or take, doable?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So Zach, I guess that, four
So like the 24th, is that what we're thinking?
Let me just
21st works for me, Monday.
I could do Monday the 21st.
Or Tuesday or Wednesday that week, if that suits folks better.
What's Monday's a little tricky for me, but I could make it work. But the rest of the week looks open for me.
Why don't we make it the 22nd then? Tuesday.
I can do Tuesday, and then the rest of the week I cannot do. Okay.
So I think we have two motions that are going to be voted on with respect to the next 40B hearings from the same applicant. So if I recall, we were talking about what date for the next Washington Street. That was November. Was that November?
I think we'd said
November
November
19, I think.
19th? Is that right?
November 19th for Washington Street, and we're talking about the second 10/22 for Brush Hill. Is that correct?
October 22, right?
Mr. Chairman, may I revoke my prior motion and make a new one?
Yes. Let's go back.
I hereby move that we continue the hearing for Washington Street Homes from tonight to November 19, 2024, 7 p.m. And that we continue tonight's hearing for Brush Hill Homes from tonight to October 22nd, 2024 at 7 p.m. That's my motion.
I second that.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. We will take a vote by roll. I will start with myself. Aye. Mr. Fitch.
Aye.
Mr. Novak.
Aye.
Wonderful. So we will continue these two hearings for Brush Hill till October 22nd and for Washington Street until November 19th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Do
you
we have a
all.
motion to close the hearing?
Adjourned.
Adjourn.
Adjourn. Seconded, unanimous. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks
Good
all.
night.
Go Patriots.
Yeah.